And that's it. I'm going to introduce y'all to Rob Kowalski and hand it over to him. I guess, I don't think he needs the mic, but if you do, here it is. You want the mic? No. You don't want the mic? Okay.
I guess everybody give it up for Michelle for putting this together. Can y'all hear me in the back? Yeah? Okay. Would you rather use the mic?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I'll go ahead. Check. Okay, thanks for having me. My name is Rob Kowalski. As Michelle said, I am an author of a book called Why Waiting Works. It's kind of echoey, huh?
Yeah. Maybe it needs to be, maybe you need to be in front of it.
How's that? Better? Yes. The echo was turned up. Okay.
There's a button called echo.
So I wrote a book called Why Waiting Works that I believe may be the most practical book ever written on the subject of waiting to have sex until marriage. And I started a nonprofit a few years ago called City Fam, which I'll tell you about tonight. So I want to share my testimony really with y'all so you know where I come from. And then we'll do the Q&A and just kind of go from there. I really like, my favorite subject to talk about is actually sex. So I don't know if that is, usually I love talking to unbelievers specifically because they just don't understand it at all. So y'all probably have a better understanding of it than most of the people that I talk to. Like on a lot of podcasts and talk about it. But we'll talk about it anyway if it makes sense. So I grew up in Baltimore. My mom was 14 years old when she got pregnant with me, and dad was never really in the picture. So pretty much taught myself how to be a man. My mom was always working, and pretty much from the time I hit puberty, I thought if I could get a lot of girls, that would validate me as a man. So I remember probably from about 15 years old, I wanted to be a stripper when I grew up. So when I turned 19 years old, I actually started stripping, and over the next few years, I went on to work for every entertainment agency in Baltimore. I was in the phone book. I was doing more shows than any other guy in Baltimore. And when I was about 25 years old, I transitioned into nightclub promoting, as I knew a lot of people and basically started throwing parties in nightclubs in Baltimore and in Washington and DC, and turned out I was pretty good at it. And my life was a party. It was complete debauchery. I was going 1,000 miles an hour in the wrong direction and had a lot of people following me. And I always say I liked being me at the time. It was easy and it was fun. Things were starting to spiral out of control at the time. Like I was 27 years old when things were really starting to spiral from all the partying. And I went to Cancun, Mexico for spring break with a group of friends. And I woke up, the first night that I spent there, I woke up and got baptized in the Holy Spirit. It was the road to Damascus experience. Was not looking for God. Didn't even know that God was real the day before. If he ever crossed my mind, the extent of it would, maybe if I saw someone praying, I would wonder if anyone was listening. And that was about as much as I thought about God. But I woke up and God called me and he said, trust me, follow me. And I did. I did the most radical 180 a person can do. I gave away, I was still stripping at the time. I gave away all my costumes. I broke up with my girlfriend at the time, who I was having sex with. I was abstinent for the next 6 years. So I always say that because I want people to understand how determined I was to, follow this path. And so I went from being the most promiscuous person I know to being abstinent for 6 years. So I literally had to cut off all my friends. I quit promoting, quit obviously going out and doing drugs and all that stuff because that was pretty much my life at the time. And I started going to a church over here in Columbia called Grace Community. Some of y'all might know it. Great church. It was awesome on Sundays, but for the other 6.5 days a week, I just didn't know what to do with myself. Like I was just literally sitting around all the time, pretty much not knowing. I was looking for people. I was looking for a group to do life with, because all my old friends I couldn't hang out with anymore. And honestly, when I went to church, I couldn't find a group like this. Sundays were great, but the other 6.5 days a week, I was like, there wasn't really anything going on fun. So I found myself going to the movies a lot, and I believed that God was going to send me a person. If I didn't sin long enough, I thought, surely he'll reward me with my person. You know, that was my whole strategy, but stay out of trouble until you meet the one. These feelings of loneliness will go away because God's going to give you a wife. So I waited for 6 years and she never came. He never sent her. So the year was 2006, and I had an idea for what became City Fam now. And so when I first got saved in 2000, it was March of 2000, God called me. I had this Moses complex where I thought, okay, God, you want me to lead everybody to you? Got it. So I told all my friends, hey guys, we're going to start going to church now. And literally no one followed me, right? Nobody came with me. And then for 6 years, I continued to invite them, and they just didn't want any part of it. So fast forward 2006, I'm having this itch, you know, for a social life because I've been sheltering myself for 6 years. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I can reach them if I'm closer to the edge, if I could, you know, make a difference from the inside. So and in hindsight, this sounds crazy, but this is through a lot of prayer. I started promoting a venue down in Baltimore on Saturday nights. It was called Casbah. It became very popular. But on Thursday nights, I had a Bible study that met in the club. So we were reading Purpose Driven Life. And we would go out to Homeless Park and feed the homeless afterward. And anybody that came on Thursdays, I would let them in for free on Saturday at the club. Didn't make them wait in line. So it was like, all of a sudden became very popular to go to Bible study. I had drug dealers and strippers coming to my Bible study. It was awesome. And I thought, these are my people. But it was so edgy, and I didn't have good accountability, and I had never backslid, so I didn't really know the pain of it, and I thought I was stronger than I was. I was still drinking at the time, and so it was kind of a perfect storm, and I ended up making a mistake with the girl. And then about a month later, I made a second mistake. So I broke my 6-year streak, and it became easier to make mistakes. I made a second mistake, and after that, I stepped down from leading the small group, and I kind of spiraled over the next few years, and until about 5 years. 2011 was when I rededicated my life, and at that point, I pretty much became like the person that I was before meeting Jesus, except it was a lot worse because I knew better. So I was living with a lot of guilt. But I rededicated in 2011. I got plugged into a great church. I was going to a church called Epic in Baltimore. I just got more involved. But for that first year, I was staying in every night renting Redbox movies because I didn't even know what to do with myself or who to do it with. I got to the point where I rented every movie in Redbox. It was like a Saturday night, and I rented Dolphin Tale. And I was so mad because I'm like, here, I'm a grown man watching Dolphin Tale on a Saturday night because I'm like, I don't even know what to do with myself. I just know I can't go to the bar. I mean, church is great, but there's nothing going on. So I was complaining to somebody about it. And I was like, I don't know about this abundant life stuff that Jesus talks about because my life is not abundant. My life sucks. And they said, well, you were a promoter. Why don't you start putting social events together to give yourself something to do, something to look forward to? And it was kind of like a light bulb went off. So I did. I started organizing what we call Fun Without Regrets social events. And because I had people from church, like friends from church that were going through the exact same thing that I was going through. They were sitting around bored, lonely. So I started organizing social events, and they came. And then the friends my old friends, their lives were now starting to fall apart from all the years of bad decisions. And I started inviting them to the social events, and what I found was it was a lot easier to get them to those places than it was to the church. And when they got around my friends that were believers, all of a sudden some of them started becoming believers. I was volunteering a lot through my church at the time, Epic, and I was really liking the way it made me feel. It was really healing me from my past. And I thought, well, these guys need to feel that, but they're not going to come to the church co-drive. So I started organizing service events for my little social group. And what I found was a lot of people jumped on it. They thought, man, they would say things like, I've always wanted to do something like this. I just didn't know how to get started. And when they started serving, it just accelerated. I saw more people's lives start to change. And over time, our group grew to the point where we thought, this is something. We have to give it a name, and we named it City Fam. And that's what ended up becoming the nonprofit. And we've seen dozens and dozens of people come to the Lord through it, and lives completely changed. So the power really of just healthy community. And I'm going to share a ladder here with you in a minute, but So that was back in 2015 was our first official City Fam event. And I was trying to explain what it was to people, without telling them basically, hey, we're trying to lead you to Jesus, because nobody wants, they won't come, basically, tell them that. So I was trying to explain what it was, and I was having trouble getting opportunities to talk about it. So I made a video it was sometime last year, it was about a year and a half ago. I made a video called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. So I like to think that I probably lived at polar ends of the spectrum when it comes to sex, more so than any human being in history. Because I had so much casual sex, and then I was abstinent for 6 years. I fell off and had a lot more casual sex, and then I was abstinent for 3 years, and then 4 years recently. And I really came to an understanding of the subject. So even Christians I do like to talk to about it, because a lot of believers, they don't even understand why. A lot of people will do it because Jesus said so, or the Bible says so, but you don't really know why. You know what I mean? And when especially if you're talking to somebody who's not a believer, they're unless you can explain it to them practically, they're not going to do it. So I really got a great handle on it. So I made this video, I posted on YouTube. It's the #1 video in the world on waiting to have sex. It's got like 1.3 million views. And in it, I talk about City Fam. At the very end, I talk about one of the reasons is it's better to have long-term friends than short-term sex partners. And I talk about City Fam, and people started reaching out from all over the world, like literally all over the world. And they're like, hey, we're waiting and we're dying. We know exactly what you're going through because we're going through the exact same thing. So they started reaching out. I was in the process of writing a book, and I did. It's called Why Waiting Works, and it won the best book for the Baltimore Sun Readers Poll just recently. And after I wrote the book, people were responding. They're like, "This is amazing. This really broke it down." And people were like, "This is causing me to reevaluate my life." And so after I wrote the book, I thought, well, it's we got to set people up for success, because if you convince them that waiting is the right tactic for their benefit, long-term benefit, you have to help them have community, because you can't do it by yourself. Like, I tried for those first 6 years, and it was the worst 6 years of my life. And then eventually I backslid, just because you just run out of gas. This is why I think people date out of loneliness, and they end up with the wrong people. This is why people use opioids, because they're bored and they're lonely and they don't have community. This is what, you see the violence that's going on in Baltimore City. Not so much with the waiting, those people are just bored. But my point is without community, it's just an impossible road to travel. And so what we did was we developed a small group curriculum for the book, and it's called The Truth About Sex. And literally people have started groups. We have groups meeting in Dallas, Houston. Houston actually started a City Fam in Phoenix. New York has met. So people are getting together, they're talking about waiting. And on week 5, they do a social event, and on week 7, they do a service event together. And by the end of the 8 weeks, they've kind of formed a tribe now. They've formed a community that if they choose to make this journey, they have the support needed to go through it. So that was that's basically what I've been up to the last few years. So I guess we can jump into Q&A. I'm trying to think if I left any parts of the story out that I want to share. Those are the most important things, yeah. So we can jump into Q&A.
I want to do one thing first.
Sure.
I just want to make a real quick announcement and say you can get up and get more snacks, get more water. I forgot to announce, there's one bathroom down here, there's 2 bathrooms up the steps. You just go up to the second floor and you'll find them. Okay? And I'll go get the papers over there. There was one thing I forgot to do earlier. As most of you know, the group's name recently changed from Single Christian Social Connection to Single Faith, and I put the new logo on the meetup site just a couple weeks ago. Our website is a work in progress. That will be I'll when we get that more content up on that, I'll announce it out to everybody. For those of you who don't know, Single Faith is also a 501c3. I haven't quite shouted that from the mountaintops yet, but I went through the process, a bit of an arduous process to become qualified to be a 501c3, so did that earlier this year. And so there's a lot ahead for Single Faith. I think Single Faith shares a lot of the same purpose that City Fam does in bringing people into community. We just come at it from two different angles. But I do want to give a shout out to the other leaders of Single Faith so that you begin to recognize them. I don't see Janice here. I was hoping Janice would be here, but most of you know Janice from the Saturday night dinners that she does each month. So she is on the leadership team. Dennis DuPont, who leads the life group at Heritage, is on the leadership team. I think he is at a chaplain's conference still. He's like, I think that's where he is. But I've got 3 of my other leaders are here tonight. Linda Blatchley, if you would stand, if you stand. So you get to recognize these people. This is Linda, and Andy Doble in the back, and Barb Jones is next to Andy. So I want to make sure you begin to recognize these faces as the leadership team of Single Faith. And there has been a person that has been mentoring the leadership team. His name is Noah Kay. And he is going to be our speaker at the Labor Day retreat. So he is going to speak a couple of times at that retreat and give us some insight. His mantra is, authenticity in relationships and kind of taking off the masks and being real and some of that really scary stuff. Honestly, that's some of his what he and he has a nonprofit as well called Integer Network. So I just wanted to explain who Noah is, and he's not going to be speaking the entire weekend. As with the last 2 years of the Labor Day retreat, we have a ton of fun. I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 with the coffee, and there's people that have just gone to bed at 4:30 because they've been, around the campfire all night. So there's something for everyone at the Labor Day retreat. So I am going to hand this back to Rob while we just transition and I get the questions if you want to go to the bathroom or get more snacks or anything.
Yeah, I just remembered something else that I wanted to share. So I actually just launched a course called How Waiting Works, and we're going through the beta now, and it's really, and by the way, if anybody out there is waiting and you're looking for support, there's a Facebook group called the Why Waiting Works community. It's about 1,400 people worldwide that are waiting and support each other. So we launched a How Waiting Works course, and it really breaks it down on how to successfully navigate that journey. So everything from knowing why you're waiting, figuring out a vision statement for your life, your morning routine, your calendar, your boundaries. Those are really things I'm passionate about talking about because, great intentions don't mean much, so unless you set yourself up, it's not an easy thing to do. And even in the Christian world, very, very small percentages of believers are waiting anymore because, again, I think it goes with the not understanding and then just living in this culture that we're in. It makes it difficult if you don't have the support. But I wanted to share the City Fam ladder with you because it may be something that you could use within Single Faith. And so what we kind of operate by, and we discovered it somewhat by accident, is we put fulfillment at the top of the ladder. So if this is you becoming the best version of yourself, living at your full potential, in your purpose. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants to get to that point. What we believe at City Fam is you don't make it without this community. You have to have a cheering section. You have to have people to inspire you, encourage you, and support you along the way because it takes so many right decisions to make it to fulfillment or you becoming the absolute best version of yourself and reaching your full potential, that if you don't have it, eventually something will take you out. You'll get on a dating app and date out of loneliness and choose the wrong person, or a substance, or whatever your thing is, without community. Now, as believers, we know church, small group, Single Faith, for example. The problem that I see and that I experienced was that and it's got to be healthy community. It can't be, people join gangs for community. So it's got to be a healthy community that inspires you to become a better person. But the problem that I've experienced is, and that I see within the church and even with sober groups, is we ask people to do this. Take this huge first step and come to church with us, right? And they don't come. 82% of this country does not go to church anymore. But we keep praying for them, we keep asking them, and they ain't coming. So what we do is we added 2 other steps. and it's social and service. Because this is easy, to get somebody to a social event. Everybody wants to have fun. These people, they're watching Dolphin Tale, right? They're bored and they're lonely. So they'll come down, and this is where the magic happens. When this person meets that person, what they say at every City Cam event, man, everybody's so nice. They don't know that we're Christians. They just think we're people, we invited them to a social event. And we're like, yeah, they really are. Guess what? We're gonna go feed some kids at Ronald McDonald House next week. You wanna come? And they're always like, yeah. They jump right on and then take another step. And again, by the time they get here, the Holy Spirit takes over and they'll walk right up the ladder. You'll see them get off the drugs. You'll see them in church and they're on a mission trip, getting baptized. Their whole life changes because they got invited to a social event. The only thing that makes us a little different than single faith is your name kind of implies that you're believers, so it does create a little bit of a barrier, because if you're not of faith, you might think, well, I don't, you know what I mean? People already have preconceived notions. At City Fam, we don't do that because we just don't want that barrier, but I still do believe it works, because it can be a lot easier to get somebody to a social event than it will be a service event. Than it will be a church, that is. And, Jesus said, where 2 or 3 gather together, there I am. So it doesn't have to be a church for him to reach people. If you have a social event and you invite, your friends, your unbelieving friends to a retreat or wherever it is, Jesus is there. And it's a lot easier invite than inviting people to your church or small group. So that's really what we've been operating by for the last few years, and we believe that it's really got the power to change a lot of the problems in society, because a lot of the things that we're experiencing is because people don't have healthy community. They're not sharing something important with anybody like we used to. Social media, lends to the problem because it has this fake version of community, but it's not really giving people anything. And the bars are packed. People why are the bars packed? Because people want to be around people. On a Friday night, on a Saturday night, you work hard all week. You want to blow off some steam. If you don't have opportunities to have fun without regret, eventually you will have fun with regret, because you're going to need community at some point. You're going to need to be around people, and fun with regret is always there. It doesn't take any planning. Your phone, you can pick it up, get on a dating app. The bar is always open. Fun without regret, somebody had to plan it. Somebody had to think of it in advance and then invite you to it. So that's what we do, is we try to plan opportunities to onboard people to keep them from doing the wrong thing. And I feel like you guys probably have the opportunity to do the same thing. So yeah, I'd love to take some questions. Some of my favorite things to talk about, again, boundaries within dating, how to maximize your time off, because it really could be the most productive season of your life. And I think you got a question.
Yeah. Could you speak a little bit more about some of the service things that you do in your group?
Yeah. So what we do is we do one a month, and we've been doing that for 4.5 years. And our social event always benefits a charity. So it's our way to kind of bridge the two together. So for example, if we're going to be we would do an event in Cancun Cantina. We've never done one, but that would be a great place to do one, because you fish where the fish are, and the fish are there. So we do, let's say we were to do an event at Cancun Cantina, and then we would say, hey, it would already be in the body of the invite. We'd say a portion of the money from tonight will go to Sarah's house. I think Sarah's house is a women's center, like Jessup, if I'm correct. Right? So automatically they're thinking about that, and then of course you use the social event as a recruitment tool. So once they're there, you're like, hey, we're going to go do this in 2 weeks. You want to come? So we're coming alongside them and kind of grab them, meet them where they are and pulling them with us. Versus just, most people aren't going to sign up, just go volunteer by themselves. They may have been thinking about it for years, but they're not going to go show up at a soup kitchen, most people, by themselves. So that we've been, Special Olympics we just did a couple months ago, we're doing a makeover of a middle school in Lakeland in July. We've been around McDonald House, Memorial Feast, Helping Out Mission, wherever you want something that can probably hold a larger group. So some of these places only can do 10 or 15 people. So you just gotta kind of call around and be creative. But if you guys want to do that, we'd be happy to tell you all the places that we've served, because we have probably a list of about 40 or 50 places that we volunteered at. We also do an international relief trip every year, so we've been to Grenada, Peru, we've been to Honduras 3 times. We're supposed to go to Nicaragua last year, but there was a bunch of unrest, so we had to cancel. But yeah.
So what does your social event look like?
So our social event, a lot of times they are in bars, because I find that's the easiest place to get the people to. And I always say to people, like, look, I've been sober for 7 years. I still like a bar if I'm with the right group of people. I don't like going to a bar if I'm the only person there and that 100 people are going the opposite direction. I'm the one person trying to go this direction. But if I'm with a group of like-minded people, I like a bar. There's music, there's food. Maybe I'll meet a girl there one day, maybe I'll meet my wife, I don't know. And I can get people, my unbelieving friends, to that place where they can be around believers. And what we do is we change the temperature. Because all of a sudden they're like, they're looking at you thinking, well, you guys aren't drunk and you're not hooking up with each other, but you're still having fun. And,
Right.
and then they see something that they can relate to. Versus saying, hey, go to church, stay in on the weekends and white knuckle it. Good luck.
It's basically a dry party.
Well, no, because we're not the sober group. There are people that drink in moderation in the group, and if they can do it, God bless them. You know.
I mean, in some degree.
Yeah, alcohol's not a sin. Food's not a sin. People are gluttons too. If people can have a beer or a glass of wine and
It's
maintain.
a fun setting. You're having fun.
Yeah, it's a fun setting, and balance is one of our pillars.
Right.
And if people have a drinking problem, a lot of times they figure it out in the context of a healthy community, because they may be a drunk, and then they start coming out and they see people that are actually headed in a direction, and they start to realize it. Versus what AA and NA does is nobody goes to those places until they hit bottom, right? Or they're court ordered. And then you go there after you hit rock bottom, and then you white knuckle it. And that's what you do. Well, ours is different. We're like, hey, we're not gonna wait for you to hit bottom. We're gonna come meet you where you're at, because the reason that you're drinking too much is probably because you don't have any healthy community. You don't have healthy friendships. And if you do, you wouldn't need it. You know, if you hang out with us long enough, you don't need those things. That's what we believe. Sure. Jenny?
You're talking about white knuckling and waiting and about fulfillment. So it's not really about white knuckling it and waiting.
What's that?
It's about waiting for sex or waiting for fulfillment. It's about growth along the way, so that you're not really focused on waiting or your sex life. You're focused on your relationship with God, but your life.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm essentially asking is, how do you see that with waiting?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think I might help you out.
Sure.
I think what she's saying is this, is that you're saying that by you waiting, you have a chance to do all these other things. What she's saying is, just because you're waiting for sex, it seems like that's not really the issue. The issue is like actually building a person up. How would you go about building that person up? But I think with you is that because sex has always been kind of like the goal in game dealing with other people, it's just easier to try to figure each other out if that was not the issue. To build up something much more strong.
What?
Right?
I still don't understand the question. So first off, City Fam isn't the abstinent group. I wish everybody in it was abstinent. There are people probably having sex. There's probably people in this room having sex, and they shouldn't be. I wish everybody in City Fam wasn't. But sanctification is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So what we want to do is meet people where they are. A lot of times they're really broken, and then you start to see them change over time. But what happens is, because I'm the founder of City Fam and I talk a lot about waiting and the benefits of it, it trickles down, and of course people just they straighten their back and they start to act different. But of course I do believe that there's probably stuff going on that I don't know about too, but we always try to make it clear that I never want to say it's the sober group or the abstinent group, because that shuts the door on the people that aren't there yet. You know what I mean? I hope they get sober in the context of the group, and I hope they, they decide to wait for God's best after they start hanging out with us. But I don't want to prevent them from coming because they think I'm gonna go hang out with a bunch of abstinent people. Because there was a time in my life that you couldn't have paid me to be abstinent. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answered it, but
In a nutshell, why would you say to wait? If
great.
somebody asked you.
So
why
it's
would
a
you say-
very practical decision. There's lots of reasons. Number one, I always say the numbers don't lie. The rate of divorces in this country is 50%. Only 3% of people wait. So mostly no one's waiting. 50% of people are getting divorced. Of the people that stay married, what percentage do you think are happy? I don't think it's that high. 20%? Yeah, maybe it's 20. So if it's 20%, that means that 1 in 10, your chances of 1 in 10 of doing it the way everybody else does and being happy. Because what happens is, and I've made all the mistakes, so I know how this plays out. Most people that are waited haven't lived the way that I have on the other side, or if they live the way that I have on the other side, they haven't waited. So I've seen both sides, and it's so clear to me. What happens is, you see, when you're not waiting, you evaluate from a completely different set of criteria. You look at somebody and you're like, your physical attraction, right, for the most part. Unless and even if you're not completely sold out to waiting, somewhere deep in your mind, you still will evaluate from physical attraction. If I look at people and I'm like, I think to myself, if I was to have sex before marriage, I would die. Like, that's the way I evaluate now. So I can tell pretty quickly if it's somebody that I'd even go on a date with, because I know there's no payoff. Meaning, like, there's not going to be sex unless we get married. So why do I need to date this person? And you know what I mean? So my strategy is to keep people in the friend zone before I go on a date with them, because I don't want to put myself in a position that's dangerous where I could fail, unless I think that there's a real good chance that I could marry this person. So when I see people that are on dating apps and things like that, I don't think there's anything wrong with them per se. But my strategy is to have a large friend group, and for the most part, I just keep people in the friend zone until I feel like I could see something telling me to take another step, at which point I would. But to evaluate somebody just, they say they're a believer and they're physically attractive, that to me is a very limited amount of information for me to go on a date with somebody. But that's my strategy. Doesn't mean it's the only
It's
one. that
more
can
than
work.
some other.
Right.
So I want to read a couple of the questions that were submitted, but I want the mic for just a second. I want to make a comment. I want to make a comment real quick about using this ladder that Rob drew here and kind of, what's the word to say, applying it to single faith and what we're going to do here. And if Linda, Barb, or Andy want to jump in and say anything, please do, but hopefully I can do this. So single faith is more, whereas Rob's group is more, and you correct me if I'm wrong, geared more towards a complete unbeliever. I think one of my, let's call it a target group, although I don't want to sound like I'm talking in a business or marketing type of term, because it's more of a heart-to-heart type of thing. It's really about perhaps a Christian single who's just really disillusioned with their faith, and really just they've fallen away from the Lord. Possibly, like when I got divorced, I didn't think I was acceptable anymore to like, God didn't want me around, so I mean, that's just what I thought. So, and I mean, I know that there's people that haven't gone to church for years, or haven't, because after they're divorced or whatever, or because they're single, they don't feel accepted by the church. They feel that the church is all people with married families and kids and that type of thing. And it can be hard. I personally don't like sitting by myself in church on Sunday morning. For me, it's the exact time when Satan reminds me that I'm alone. You see so many other couples with their arm around the shoulder of the person that they're with, or you see the families and that kind of stuff, and you're like, why didn't I get that? Why didn't my life turn out that way? Or why don't I have that? So where I want the person down here at the bottom that I am looking to get to with single faith is the person who hopefully I just described, the person who would identify as a Christian single. They would say, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm pretty disconnected from the Lord because of life circumstances. And then what I want to do is get them involved in social activities. I would love to see more service activities, and I may need to talk to Rob about his secret, because I tried service activities and they seem to fall flat. I don't get enough people to sign up, so I end up having to cancel it. But I get, social activities are kind of the way that people come in. Then I want to get people into a community. And then the people who are at this top level, the fulfillment, I like how he says they come back down to come to the social events, because there's new people that show up at every single social event that Single Faith has. So once you've gotten your community and reached fulfillment, yes, please continue to do stuff with your friends. I love to hear the fact that so-and-so went somewhere. I mean, I just got back from a trip to Rhode Island with 6 other ladies from this group. I mean, I wouldn't have met those 6 ladies if it wasn't through this group. So, I like travel with people, go places with people, go to other events that are not meetup events, but then come back to the meetup event to help other people to find what you found. Please do stuff with other people. It's not just doing stuff with the meetup, but come back to the meetup is what I'm saying. So I really like what you said about the fulfilled people, and not that we're all there yet, but them coming back down to come along other side of people and really build that community. So
my community was my wife and my family. When she passed away, that community sort of dissolved. The fulfillment of community kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And now you're looking for, forget the service part.
Right.
You want to be social. You want to be connected to someone.
Yeah.
And every night you go home, every day you go home,
Yeah.
you're all alone because all kids are growing up and they moved away.
Yeah.
So now you have to refine yourself. And the social group, I take my hats off to you. It isn't, personally, I'm a Christian man. I wouldn't mind going to a bar and just hanging out, get a couple of drinks here and there. I don't drink a lot,
Yeah.
but I haven't been to that setting
Right.
since my wife passed, actually. So, not because I want a bar hop or anything, but to be in that kind of loose, relaxed state and to socialize with not just the Christian people. Because, some people have very sensitive ears, and I have been non-Christian and Christian at the same time. It's not like I don't know how to behave like a non-Christian.
Yeah.
I choose to behave like a Christian.
Yeah.
But, we are both actually
Right.
in one body because we know both sides.
Yeah, Jesus said go, right? He didn't say invite people to come. That's what the church has turned into. We invite them, but we don't go. And this is the way someone described it to me, as if this was a river of sin. Addiction, whatever, broken relationships, and people are caught in it and they're floating down it. Where's the best place to reach them? Is it up here on the bank, or is it right here with 1 foot in the water? It's there, but it's also the most dangerous. So you have to be locked arms with other people, or it'll suck you in, because that's what happened to me the first time I tried to do it. But if you're intentional about it, it's the most effective place, and you literally pull them out, because they want this. They want community. They do. You guys have a great thing. And they'll jump right on if you make it
Well,
easy for
actually,
them.
you're not the one at the bank. You're the one who's inviting them to the social event.
Well,
So
we
it
go-
is your river that they're coming to.
Well, we
no,
go-
this is the river of sin.
This
He's
is
not
this is Cancun Cantina. That's it. we go there, but we're locked arms. You know what I mean? And we're pulling them out one by one. And Single Faith, I'm not saying you have to go to Cancun Cantina, and I'm not
I don't
advocating
even know what,
necessarily.
I've heard of Cancun Cantina. What is it?
It's just
It's a bar.
It's a country
Bar, place to
But it is the
dance.
most effective place, and there's a reason that Jesus was at
Oh,
Matthew.
that's why I've heard of it.
Yeah. Jesus was at Matthew's house, and religious people didn't understand it, and we still don't understand. We're like, well, why would you do that? Now, you have to make sure you're being intentional about it. But if you're being super intentional about going to those places with the right people, with other people, it's super effective.
I got a statement too. I noticed that a lot of people say you gotta be Christian, you gotta be this. It's a lot of labels going on. We always learn if you're a person of God, you're a person of God. So what I mean by that, that you exude it anywhere you go. So it's like you truly, within your community, and believe who you are.
Wasn't created to go to the same place that you were created to go to. So they can't support you in you going over here with your purpose if they're supposed to support somebody that was going over here. So you never reach your potential. So for me, waiting is selfish because I want to accomplish my purpose and reach my full potential. So when I think about those things, oral, whatever, any of that, there's still potential of getting a soul tie, you know, because at the very best, what's going to happen is if someone is doing that, if somebody's performing fellatio on you, and you're not in a committed relationship, first off, there's a reason why, because you're not, at least one of you aren't sure that you're in love with them. That's the reason why you're not in a committed relationship. So at the point that you go, I no longer want to get fellatio from you, I want to get fellatio from you, guess what? She's gone, or he's gone, and they're not your friend anymore. So literally, sex without commitment breaks community. It's anti-community. And the devil's goal is to get all of us alone. He wants to break us up so he can pick us off one by one because he can beat you up when you're by yourself. So it's anti-community. So I think, you know, and this is from personal experience, is I would have, girls would have sex with me without commitment. I'd be very clear up front that it wasn't going anywhere. Like I'm not looking for a relationship, but they would be like, yeah, I'm cool with it. But still what would happen is you would continue to have relations with them, and then at some point you start feeling obligated towards that person. Like you owe it to them because they put up with so much of your stuff. And then you make them your girlfriend or your boyfriend. And that can very well happen with not just sex, that can happen with any kind of sex or any kind of contact. In addition to the fact that, you know, like, so my boundaries are, I haven't spent time alone with females for 4 years because the last time I made a mistake was back in 2015. I'd been abstinent for 3 years, and I was hanging out with a girlfriend watching movies at my house. We had never kissed or held hands or anything. there was some attraction, but nothing had ever, and we started kissing, and I couldn't stop, And I thought surely I could pull the emergency brake, even if that was my thought before it happened. I'm like, if we make out one night, I'm like, that's not that big of a deal, And we started kissing, and there was no stopping, So, and I was on leadership at my church, and I was very outspoken about my stance on waiting. And for me, it's like a risk reward. Like, I don't want to damage the faith that people have placed in me. I don't want to get stuck with the wrong person. I don't want to hurt another person. So for me, my boundaries are up far, and it's hard. It's exhausting to maintain those boundaries at times. Because going home, like, I want to cuddle. I made a vlog this week about missing physical contact. I would love to just spoon with somebody, but it's too dangerous. So if you're serious about waiting, and you should be, because it really, there's a reason that the Bible puts it in a class all of its own. It says, all other sins you commit outside your body, but if a person sins sexually, sins against their own body. There's a reason that it makes it so unique, because I believe it's a connection mechanism, and what happens is you can connect very easily with the wrong person. I mean, it's biology, oxytocin. I don't know if you all know about that hormone. But there's a hormone release when you have sex. With women, it's released during sex. With men, it's released when you commit. There's a great TED Talk called How Your Brain Falls in Love. That's why guys can have sex and bounce easier than women. Women don't, it doesn't work the same.
Why is it so hard for men to wait?
Well, men want sex and women want security. So, people get mad at me when I say that, but if you boil it down to a base level, men want sex and women want security. So that's why, like, coming into a relationship, 99 times out of 100, a woman's going to say, when, right? Men take it as fast as you give it, at least guys that aren't Christians.
Well, even Christians.
And honestly, a lot of guys in church still take it as fast as they give it. But what happens is a woman will give the sex, and then she'll chase the guy around for the commitment, because that's the thing that he's in control of. There's a reason that women flash that ring when they get the commitment. They're like, I got it. You know what I mean? Men aren't flashing the ring. They're like, they got their arm around the girl going, yeah, that's mine. You know what I mean? Because men want sex and women want security. But the way it was always supposed to be, and if you watch that TED Talk, it was supposed to be on your wedding night, because the man gives the commitment and the woman gives the sex at the same time, and then you lock together. After you've already been through the vetting period with a clear head. Because when you're not having sex, you see the red flags real easy. When you're having sex, you don't see them. You're like, I don't know, I think I'm in love, maybe I'm in love, you know what I mean? So my last girlfriend, we were having sex. This is when I rededicated my life to God. And he started convicting me of the sex. And like, that was funny, I turned on the TV, we were about to have sex. I was like, let me turn some music on. I turned on the TV, I turned on channel 411 on Comcast, everything above 400 is music stations. So I turned on 411 just because 111 was the fastest to hit. And it was gospel. I go one down, and it was old school R&B, and the first lyrics that came on said, "Temptation's gonna get me every time." And I was like, oh crap, turn the TV off. So after that, I said, look, I told her, I said, I don't know if you and I are built to last. I said, because we had a very tumultuous relationship. Good sex, but rocky relationship. But we were on a good run, and I started to think, well, maybe I am in love with this girl, and but God started convicting me, and I said, look, I'm not sure if we're built to last, but the way I believe that we're going to find out is we're going to stop having sex. And if we both become convinced that we're in love, we'll get married. But if we become convinced we're not in love, let's stop wasting each other's time. So we cut the sex off, and the clouds parted. And I could see clearly, and so could she. And 3 weeks later, we broke up. Because when you're not having sex, it's very easy to see it. But when you are, it's almost impossible. Because there's so many hormones going through your body, that you can't evaluate. So that for me is one of the main reasons why I wait and why I keep the boundaries up so far, is because even with oral or any of that, there's still the possibility of you getting the soul tied to the wrong person.
This can lead to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to be sure I do get through the questions, and then we can gladly take questions from the floor. Can you tell me why masturbation is a sin?
Sure. Well, Jesus said that if you lust after a woman, even in your mind's eye, you commit adultery in your heart. So it'd be pretty hard to, orgasm without imagining something, right? So definitely for that reason. You know, there's a lot of studies out there on NoFap. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of NoFap. It's basically like, you know, not masturbating, because it, you know, semen is life, it's energy. And if you're just manually releasing, it causes social anxiety disorder, depression, especially porn, by the way.
Yeah,
They say
that's a question on here actually.
porn-
How does porn play a negative role in the relationship?
Yeah.
So speak on that.
And you start thinking, you know, like, trust me, I went through all this myself, where you're like, who am I hurting, you know? But there's numerous studies on it. They call porn the new tobacco. It's terrible for you. You get this unnatural dopamine release in your brain when you watch porn. And what happens is, because your brain is always trying to achieve homeostasis, you lower the amount of dopamine receptors. And what happens is now it takes more stimuli or whatever to get the same amount of enjoyment out of just regular things. So that's why people get depressed that are watching porn. And in addition to the fact that if you're feeding that animal, you know, it's getting stronger. And at some point, a thought will lead to an action, you know, and an action will lead to a habit will lead to a character, and character to a destiny. So the best thing is to not do anything, which is extremely difficult, but that should be the goal. That should be your goal.
I'm involved in a 12-step program that has a serious addiction class of porn, and it's destroying marriages. So even if you're being celibate and you're looking for a perfect mate, it still is going to become an issue in your marriage, because it becomes an addiction that you're feeding the beast with.
Yeah, I have
And
a friend that
Yeah.
that's in City Family. He got married, and he was having trouble getting it up because he watched porn when he was
Yeah.
single, you know. And here he's got a live person, and now he's having trouble.
It's a serious, serious thing.
Yeah, I had another friend, and this is actually supposedly documented, that he was watching a lot of porn, and he was a straight guy, and it got to the point where he was having to watch gay porn to get off, because. And he's not gay, because it has to get more twisted. If you look up diminishing returns, porn is one of the definitions. So it's terrible for you, you know.
That's how serial killers start with the porn.
What about the soul tie, and how do you get there with casual sex? What's the soul tie, what do you mean by that? And how do you get there with casual sex?
I think it's just biology, you know, that's the way I equate it, because I look at oxytocin, and I just look at personal experience, where, you know, my first girlfriend, I had sex with her on the first night, you know, and told her I wasn't really looking for anything, but we continued to have sex. Like, you know, I was seeing other people here, you know, I'm 20 years old, I was seeing other girls on the side, but Monday night would come around and she'd be like, hey, I made some food, do you want me to come over with a Blockbuster? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm not doing anything tonight. She'd come over, we'd have sex. And if you do that enough times, eventually you start feeling obligated to them. And they start, of course, women, if a woman is having sex with you, 99 times out of 100, she wants to be in a relationship with you, right? And it puts women at a position of disadvantage. And this is why I tell women it's so dangerous to have sex with men outside of marriage, because you don't know, they haven't been clear about their intentions through action. They could say, I love you, I want to marry you, whatever, but if they haven't actually done it, you don't know. They might even be believing it when they say it. You know, but at the end of the day, the reason that marriage works, and this is why people are like, what's the difference? It's just a piece of paper. And I'm like, no, it's not. I've done this. Because the Bible says the heart is deceitful above all things. So your heart will fool you. It'll lie to you and to doing things that your flesh wants, right? But if I was to say to you, hey, I love you, is it Jenny? I love you, Jenny, let's have sex. And you said, I love you too, Rob, let's just go to the justice of the peace real quick and get married. It changes the conversation. Right? Because I'm like, let me think about this a little longer. You know what I mean? Because it's going to cause me pain to get out of it. So now I'm thinking, is my heart lying to me? Because I'll be honest, there's a lot of beautiful women in City Fam, and there's plenty of nights that I was depressed and lonely, and there was a couple of them I thought, well, maybe I love them. I could have convinced myself, but at the end of the day, if I asked myself, would you sign the marriage contract to have sex with her? I always answered no. So that's how I knew. Because in the Bible, there was no ceremony. It was like, if you sleep with her, she's yours. That's what marriage was, sex. You have sex with her, she's yours. It changes it. What we want to do is we want to grab it off the rack, take a sip, and put it back if we don't like it. And then what does that do to that thing? It lowers the value. Because I mean, right? People say you want to buy a car without taking it for a test drive. I'm like, what if somebody test drove it 1,000,000 times? Do you want it? I mean, right? Probably not, right? You want to pay full price for a car that somebody wore out. So I'm saying, like, and I know it sounds a little, but it's true. You know, there's verses in the Bible that talk about it, and you know, specifically, no, I don't want to get into that one, but we are equals, but we're not the same. You know,
I'm just
men and
intrigued
women
with
are-
that whole concept of soul tie.
Yeah.
And how that happens for men and women.
Yeah, I mean, people get stuck together, and then I don't know if you've ever been in a physical relationship that's split apart, it's super painful. When you're not getting physical, it's really not that painful to break up with somebody. You know, it's very not painful at all, really.
Is that true for men too?
What, when you're not having sex? When you
Or
are?
painful or the-
Oh, when you're having sex, sure. Yeah, I mean,
But if you're the one who's breaking up, it doesn't hurt.
my first girlfriend, I'll tell you.
If a girl wants to break up with you, now that hurts.
Well, you know what?
If you're the one who's breaking up
No,
with her.
even if you're breaking up with her. So I'll tell you, the first girl I
You're
dated.
moving to the next one, so you're not really.
Maybe you are. Maybe you just want to be free. So my first girlfriend, I was with her for 5 years. I was not in love. I, told her one night, I'm like, I don't think I'm in love or whatever. And she finally ended up leaving. And I thought, that's what I wanted. And as soon as she left, it was like she flipped the table on me and all of a sudden took the control that I had away, and it destroyed me. So I convinced her to come back to me. She actually started dating somebody else. I convinced her to come back to me. We started dating again, and I thought, oh, thank God, it's going to be different this time. And within about 2 weeks, it was right back, and I thought, why did I do that? I was free. So we broke up again, and same thing. She started dating somebody else, and it destroyed me. And I wanted to get back with her, and fortunately, she ended up marrying the guy that she was dating. But it was like we had a soul tie, and I was completely helpless to it. I knew that I was caught in something beyond my control, but I couldn't do anything about
I
it.
didn't understand soul ties, so I kind of, I think it's jealousy and possession.
Totally. I think it has to do with possession, though, because the way God wired it is, you have sex with them,
Yeah.
you're each other's, you belong to each
I
other.
remember doing that when I was a
You
young
become
man.
one. You become one.
And when
Yeah.
you separate being one,
Right.
then it's a rip.
Yeah. Have you ever seen plywood, stuck together? If you pull that stuff apart, it's not going to look the way it did when you stuck it together. There's going to be pieces missing and broken and chipped off.
More importantly here is that when you're having, as a Christian, when you're having sex with someone, you're damaging the first relationship, that is the relationship with you and the Holy Spirit. Because Holy Spirit dwells in you. When you're becoming one with another woman or another man, you're introducing your Holy Spirit to that person who's is not equally yoked. And what it does is damage your relationship, and it clouds the relationship that you have with Jesus. So I think that's probably for me, that's probably the biggest thing that would prevent me from wanting to have sex with someone, because I don't want to damage or cloud the relationship that I have with Jesus. But at the same token, I like hearing about these social events, because in reality, your hope is with Jesus. But at the same token, when you hear about opportunities to meet other people, it gives you hope. Because obviously you don't want to, date sites and those things are all great and everything, but I mean, it's probably best to just meet a real person and make a real conversation, make real connection, rather than,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say, I'd like to hear some questions, even just for me. One thing I'm interested in is some of the questions actually on dating, and actually trying to, how do we do this dating thing? Like, who calls who, and how do you let a man know you're interested in him, and how do you let somebody know you're not interested in them, and when they are kind of pursuing you, and how do you let, what do you do in those first few weeks of dating? Maybe what do you do you know, like I just saw something this was on a Facebook message group. This guy, like 3 weeks ago, he was like, I'm officially in a relationship now, bye everybody, kind of thing. And then this morning he was back. So, I don't want to laugh at him, but I'm thinking, okay, you're officially in a relationship now, and you've just done checked out, you know, but I mean, I have some questions. How do you navigate the whole dating thing? Why do you end up, I got a question for you. Why do you end up, why do you start talking to a guy and then suddenly, again, like they ghost you? It's that whole ghosting thing. That's a new term to me.
Yeah.
But it's that whole, suddenly they just stop talking to you and don't take your phone calls and don't return your texts and, you know, that kind of stuff. What's up with that?
I mean, so I made a video recently called "Should a Woman Pursue a Man?" And my belief is no, because men are hunters and pursuers by nature. And if a man wants you, he'll make it known. You know, like a lot of women are, you know, they're trying to figure out men. They make things mean things they don't really mean. You know, like he held the door open for me, or you know, if a man wants you, he's gonna make it known. And it's a challenging environment for women right now because the culture is really jacked up. Like, so many women are giving it out for free that men are just like, if a woman says, hey, you gotta wait, you know, like I'm not having sex with you till I get married, it's, you know, a lot of guys won't because they can just go down the block and get it from the next person. But what I do tell women is, you know, I think a lot of women what prevents them from making that decision to wait is fear. Because when I decided to wait, the devil, that's the first thing he told me. He said, if you don't have sex with your girlfriend, you're gonna turn into a man whore again, and that'll be worse. That was the lie. I dismissed it, I listened to God, and I believe that a lot of women are afraid of that. They're afraid of taking that stance, but what I tell them is what it does is it will attract the right one and repel the wrong ones. You might have to go through a lot of wrong ones to get to that right one. But I know for me now, if I meet a woman and she says I'm waiting, it intrigues me. It makes me lean in. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool, like a unicorn. You know, but before, when I was a scumbag, I would have been like, I'm out. And great, because you just did yourself a favor. You avoided me. You know, so don't be afraid. To the ladies in the room, don't be afraid to make that decision because you'll attract the right one faster and you'll repel all the wrong ones. And they'll tell you that you're stupid and you're crazy and nobody does that. It's 2019 or whatever. Guys will say and do anything to have sex without commitment. You all don't know that yet. We'll be charming. We'll be funny. You know, we'll take you on trips. We'll spend money. We'll do all that. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, marriage.
I want to hope that Christian guys are different.
No,
they're not.
I mean, I really do. I want to hope that Christian guys are different. I guess the other ladies out there are saying no, they're not. They just want sex as well.
Well,
but
the reality is you don't know if the guy is really into Jesus or not. Maybe he's just a churchgoer. You know?
Yeah.
And even if he's really into Jesus, I mean that traction, if you're alone,
Yeah.
and if you have that attraction, like Rob said, I mean, kiss can go a long way.
It's
and
hard.
you end up in a bedroom.
Yeah.
No doubt. It's just, you just have to be in a certain setting and environment until you get to know each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, as far as I'm concerned, once you start making certain connection, you know, let's go see the pastor, see if we are actually right for each other for the marriage. Let's go and get a marriage counselor from a pastor.
Even like Solomon and David, I mean, these are great men of the Bible. That was always the thing, was women. That was their downfall. It's the hardest thing for a man to do. It really is. So even if there's pastors all the time that get caught doing things.
Right.
Because it's really that difficult, you know, but it's as hard as it is, it's equally beneficial. Men don't understand it. This is what I say, like, you'll have more sex in the long run if you wait. Because what you'll do is you'll choose the right person versus this is what always happened to me. And I tell people physical attraction fades. And there's plenty of studies to prove it. I don't care how hot they are. If you don't have a deep connection, sooner or later the physical attraction will go away and you could be stuck with somebody in a sexless relationship. It's happened to me plenty of times where I just wanted to go to sleep at night. And they were beautiful girls. Because I had sex quick, got a soul tie, and now I'm stuck with somebody, I'm not having sex. It's like the trick God played on us. He's like, oh, you're not gonna wait? Okay. I'll teach you. And then you don't want it. 50% of the marriages and divorce, of the marriages that stay together, 50% of them don't have sex after 4 years.
Really?
Yeah, that's the study.
I want to say, it's not a trick that God played on us, it's really the trick that Satan played on
Yeah,
us.
well-
Because he deceived us that, look, this is good,
Yeah.
and you get in and it's a lie.
Not the trick that God played on us, but look, all the key to long-term happiness is delayed gratification. I challenge people all the time. I'm like, think of something where instant gratification produces long-term happiness. You can't even think of one. Sex is the same thing. If men understood it, how practical it is and how it's in our best interest, and not only that, we'll choose that right person that's going to help us reach our purpose, because men are really driven. Like, we want to succeed. So you're going to need that person by your side to help you, the right person. And if you know that waiting will help you get them, I think people are more prone to do it. But there's just so much confusion about the topic, even in the church. Like, when I started waiting, I didn't get it at all. I didn't understand it one bit. I was like, why is sex wrong? I was like, well, we're making each other feel good, you know? I actually only started doing it because God told me that he had a person for me if I waited. And I'd never been in love when I became a Christian, so I thought, all right, I'll wait because I want to make sure I get the right one, and I believe that he was going to send her. That's why I waited 6 years, and then I started to understand it all. Yeah.
The question is, it has nothing really to do with sex, it's just relationship. So the question I have is, what is the core elements you look for within a woman? What is the core elements that you look for within that person?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So my first two were, obviously, I want physical attraction. I want them to love Jesus. Not in that order, but I want, I won't even look if they're not, not to say, listen, I could be friends with someone that maybe I didn't notice initially, and then they grow on me. That's what happened to my co-founder, a City fan. He liked another girl for 2 years. He kept, told her how much he liked her, and she just didn't reciprocate. And then one day she started to see him, and now they're married. And that could happen. Absolutely, that could happen. But I'm gonna make a list. I've never made a list because my whole thought was your head can't tell your heart how to feel. So one day, I could say I want a certain, I can make a list a mile long, and the person can come into my life and be not any of those things. You know what I mean? If your heart feels it, it feels it. I mean, I do want them to love Jesus and be physically attractive. Those to me are the absolute,
Laugh at my stupid joke.
Emotional
Hey, there's no laughter, man. I mean, you could have so much sex. I mean, after that's done, you need to be able to laugh at one another.
Right.
And if you don't have that,
They need to have good emotional health. Without that, we're involved.
Rob, I totally missed it when I stepped out of the room, but can you backtrack to you don't think it's attractive to men if a confident woman approaches them about dating?
I think it's okay to make your interest known. There's ways to let guys know that you're interested, but I don't think a woman should ask a man out. I don't. I think you emasculate them on some level. Like, men want to pursue, and what you'll get is you might get a guy that's 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Right.
Because it's easy to get a guy to be physically attracted. Maybe, and he'll certainly more than likely, especially if he's not a believer, he'll have sex with you. But then you'll get somebody that's 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and neither one of you will make each other happy long term. If a guy's interested in you, he's going to make it known. I mean, even if you like his Facebook post or his Instagram post, he's looking at your profile. He is. I mean, I was a single guy. Trust me, I know. If a cute girl, or a girl I consider cute, likes my picture, I'm gonna go look at her pictures, see if she loves Jesus, and her news feed, is she talking about anything? If she's cute, I might friend her or whatever. So I would pursue if there was someone. But I think fear, makes us think the clock's ticking. I got to go out and find somebody. God, is God really in control? Is he going to send somebody? Those are thoughts that go through our mind, but I still know he's on the throne. He's in control.
I agree.
I don't think there's
Totally
one
agree.
perfect way. But
Yeah, I'm not saying don't make not to make your interest known. I think that's fine, but I don't think women should ask men out. I don't.
I think it's more
Hang
important.
on,
not to
James,
be
we got some
petty.
questions.
So how do you take a woman who has to handle everything in her life, so she has to be very take charge and strong, etc., whatever word you want to use for that, and then she has to pedal and sit back and wait?
What's the question?
How do you take, you have, women who have to take, they live alone, they're single, they have to handle everything. You become very take charge, and then you have to forget about being take charge around men.
Yeah.
That's a very.
Tell me. So you think that you have to be take charge when you see something you want, you got to go after it. Like if you see a man, you're going to go after him.
No, but I think it's really hard to.
Turn it off.
Exactly, because I have to handle every other single thing in my life, and if I don't do it strongly, it's not gonna happen. But then you're saying that's not gonna work around that, and how do you forget the way you have to function 99% of the time, whether it's with your home, your work, or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference in, putting yourself out there a little bit, making it, making your interest in it versus being thirsty. There's a lot of thirsty women out there, and they're chasing guys around because it's fear, and most of the time it keeps them single longer because it looks like desperation, and nobody's attracted to that. What is attractive is independence, so that's what I believe. Does anybody else have any more questions here?
There was a question, you kind of already answered it. How does one reconcile the need for human connection and physical contact with the downside of multiple partners and disease and all the negatives that come with sex? So you have that desire for physical contact, as you're saying, we all do. Especially, I only have 3 dogs. Kind of helps.
I know some people in City Camp have talked about getting massages, like they go to masseuse or masseur or whatever and get massages to help with that. I haven't been able to figure it out. I mean, the weight is super difficult. I struggle with it. It's not easy, even with a great community with City Fam. It's an emotional roller coaster. I get depressed sometimes. I get lonely. I get horny. I mean, all the things. But I'm very focused on what I want most versus what I want right now. I mean, when you know what you want, and that I believe is, I attribute a lot of it to the weight, because when I put sex on the altar, God revealed my purpose. I didn't really know what it was up until then. He made it clear what I was to do. It was so good that I was like, okay, I need his help, so I'm definitely gonna, not sin as much as possible. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna keep this out of my life. But when I get to that thing, the promised land. I always say the promised land. When I get there, it's going to be really gratifying. I'm going to be walking in my purpose. Like I had to leave Egypt. I'm in the wilderness still. I've been in the wilderness for a long time. It feels like, but I'm on my way to this place. And that's what I want most. So many people go back though. They go back to Egypt because the wilderness is uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar. It's hard. You think about the Israelites. There's so many parallels to what God takes us through, but you have to be willing to go all the way through. And sometimes it's just is not fun. It's just not fun to wait and to trust and not know. And I might never have sex again. I was thinking to myself, that could be God's plan. I don't know. It's a horrible thought.
I have a question. The question is about the group. So in your group, let's just say there are 2 people who are attracted to each other and hang out with each other and stuff, and you're really building this bond, but you're all trying to encourage each other to really, have sex to get married. How do you guys go about helping counsel them so they won't do those things?
Yeah. So we kind of work with, we're partnered somewhat with churches. So there's people that are spiritually mature, in the group that kind of mentor. What we're trying to build out now is that these people are called ambassadors, and they're our version of a sponsor. Like when you go to AA or NA, you get a sponsor. So we want these people to be ambassadors, and they're going to be, for the most part, they're going to be committed followers of Christ, to pair up with these people and walk them up. That's what we really want to do. But a lot of times it's just the culture itself. It just kind of helps people, act better. It creates a new norm for them. Yeah.
I got a question on here. It says, or did somebody raise their hand? Did you raise it? Okay, Alex, I'll ask your question, Alex, first.
What would a healthy Christian community look like?
I always look at Acts, and the first century believers, they were getting together, breaking bread, eating, praying together. They were meeting in homes though, you know, and that's how it started for me. When I recommitted, we got together over a guy named Billy Lofton's house and we just did life together. We had a Bible study there, but every weekend we were just hanging out, we were watching movies, we were grilling out. And what I would do is we would have these social events and I would invite them, I would invite the people back. I would say, hey, we're gonna get together next Friday over Billy's house. And once they got in that setting, into the house, that's when their life really started to change because it was intimacy. It was like all of a sudden now, it's hard to get in, you can't have intimacy in big groups. You know, like you just can't know what's going on with everyone. So like something at City Fam we've done is we've kind of realized that it has to be, our big events have to be big, like, you know, however big, but we have to have lots of small circles in the big circle. There always has to, because in order for people to really change, this is where the magic happens, is in small settings. So when I think about, you know, what was it, healthy Christians, healthy Christian community?
Christian community.
Yeah, I mean, doing life together, you know, not just meeting on Sundays, but doing life, you know, where everything, serving together, socializing together, encouraging each other, praying with each other, eating together, you know, just hanging out. Like, idle hands are the worst, you know. When you're sitting at home on a Friday or Saturday night, how long are you gonna do that? Before you eventually just go, you know, go do something bad. Or start drinking until oblivion because your reality is not good. I don't know if you ever, have you ever heard of Rat Park? There was a study they did back in the 70s. Yeah, please. It's actually a TED Talk called The Opposite of Addiction Isn't Sobriety, The Opposite of Addiction is Connection. And it talks about the study that they did with these rats. And they took these laboratory rats and they put them in cages by themselves. And then after a little bit, they would put this water laced with heroin or cocaine in the cage. And 9 out of the 10 rats drank the water until they overdosed and died. Then they took laboratory rats and they put them in a cage with each other. They took this maze, they put it in the cage, they let them play, they call it Rat Park, they let them establish some social dynamics. And then they took the water laced with heroin or cocaine and they put it in the cage. And only 3 out of the 10 tried it and none of them drank till they overdosed. And I was like,
Wow.
well, no crap, they had something to do. And so you look at the opioid epidemic, those people are bored, you know? I mean, and they're lonely. So if you can take healthy community to them, so imagine if you were an addict, you know, and you're like, Friday comes around and you ain't got nothing to do, you might call your dealer or go to the bar or whatever, you know, get on Tinder or whatever your thing is. But if somebody, single faith organized or 80s roller skating party to benefit whatever, you know, helping up, and someone invited you, you might go, that sounds like it could be cool, maybe I will go. And then you get around some healthy people, and now you have something to do, you have a support system, you know, so that's what's worked for us. And I feel like the church needs to, that's what we need to do a better job of. Instead of just inviting people to the building, we gotta create, you know, we gotta create opportunities that they like, you know, that they will actually come to. And for us, social has been that thing. Like, we've seen, again, a lot of people, I would say 30% of the church at Epic is probably responsible, City Fam is responsible for it. Is that not
Okay, I got another question here. And it says, it is back to this more. Okay, now you're in love, with a big exclamation point. What are the practical things you can do to resist the temptation of premarital sex?
Get married.
No, not prematurely. I know, I'm just gonna say, I know people that, let's just say over the 8 years I've been running this group, they found that person, they're so quick to get married because they wanna have sex. I really believe that's a driving factor oftentimes. And the marriage lasts like, you know, less than a year, let's say.
I married my wife
I mean,
after 6 months of meeting. We married for 33 years before she passed away. So, you know, this is all, you know, if God ordains it, you could be dumbest person in the world. I was the dumbest person in the world, made all the mistakes you could possibly make. But when he says that marriage is going to last, it is going to last. It will get over all those humps, all those difficulties.
Okay, but getting married is not the answer to.
Well, I mean, you just said there you're in love.
Well, yeah, people say,
well, there's that. A lot of people say they're in love and they're not really in love.
Right, people say, if we're in love, then what's wrong with that? If people are in love, I'm like, well, if they're in love, why don't they get married? You know, because prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. Because you could think that you're in love again, it changes the conversation. Marriage changes the conversation. So I don't, I don't think you should date forever. If you're sure and you have peace about it. Some people say long dating process, short engagement. That's probably smart. Once you're sure, I mean, what's the point in waiting anymore?
Good test is if you don't see each other for 2 weeks and you're itching at the bits, you should probably get married.
But all the stuff, because people respond to this that video, especially on YouTube. There's like, people don't encourage people to wait because people will just get married to have sex, and all the studies show that it's the opposite that's true. So people that marry with the least amount of sex partners, 0 to 1, they have the best marriages, the highest success rates, and the best sex lives. And people with over 10 partners have the highest divorce rates and the least amount of sexual satisfaction in a relationship. Like, again, it's the devil, it's the lie. We think, oh, sex is great, so obviously variety is gonna be better. It's not true.
So when you're in a relationship.
So when you're in a relationship.
What are the practical things you can do to resist that temptation of premarital sex?
What do they call it, the Mormons, the magic underwear?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I've never heard of that.
I heard about that the other day.
Chastity belt. Jinx.
Yeah. Boundaries, I mean, so again, I think if you're dating someone and moving toward marriage, you can't say I'm not gonna hang out alone with them, because that's probably unrealistic. Like, to me, that's a risk reward. I don't hang out with women alone because I haven't met anybody that I feel like could potentially be the one, so it's not gonna happen. But when I do meet that person, I'm sure we're gonna probably hang out and watch a movie. I'm gonna have great accountability, I'm gonna pray a lot. I'm not going to, so this is what my pastors told me, because they waited, is they would not touch anywhere that had clothing. So only the places where there wasn't clothing you could touch. You know what I mean? So you could touch their hand or maybe their arm. You couldn't grab their butt, so don't fall asleep at each other's house. I think it's completely unrealistic to try to spend the night at your partner's house, because that's just stupid, But yeah, I mean, I tell people, like, once you're sure, get married and then have all the sex. Nobody's against sex. God loves, He invented sex, so sex is great. I want to have more of it than anybody. I'm just trying to be smart about it, I don't know if that answered your question, did it?
Well, this is the question that was answered. I'm just saying the temptation is really real.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in a relationship, it's very easy to say, oh, I'm not gonna have sex until you are in a relationship.
Yeah.
Then it's like.
See, I can't even talk about that, because I've waited and I've been physically active, but I actually had a girlfriend for about 2 months late last year, and we didn't have sex. And I wasn't in love, though. I know if I was in love, then I'm sure it's harder, because now your feelings are growing stronger for that person. But at the point that both of you are sure, in my mind, I say get married. I don't think 6 months is too short. I don't think so.
No, it wasn't, not for me.
Yeah, 33 years.
Man, that don't know all over again.
Yeah.
Here's a question. I hear that sex is motivation to the marriage, but anyone ever thought about, like, can sex not be the motivation to the marriage, but something else, like the person?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing sex as the motivation to get married and have sex, but I also want to hear, like, the other motivations too.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you're asking. So, people will talk. The number one argument that people say is like, what if you get married and sex isn't good, right? That's the number one thing people say to this when you talk about waiting. And what I always say is, what if the sex is good and you marry the person and then they get hit by a car or they get cancer? Do you leave? Because if you base the relationship on sex, you might, and then your vows mean nothing, actually, right? So my thought is if you wait and you fall in love with that person, you're not marrying a body part, and even if the sex wasn't up to whatever, standard you had or thought it would be, you work through it.
You can
just
practice.
like
You can practice.
And my thought is, and this is what I said, is if you're waiting.
Come on, we gotta be authentic here. You can practice.
If you're waiting, and you start having sex, any amount of sex is better than no sex. So it's gonna be good. In comparison to no sex.
Besides, in these days, when